I'd like to call to order the March 5th meeting of the Parks, Recreation, Community Service. Let's have roll call, please.
Commissioner Khan.
Here.
Commissioner Ropfogel.
Here.
Commissioner Sharkey.
Here.
Commissioner Sinanian.
Here.
And Commissioner Ward.
Here.
The agenda for the March 5th, 2008 meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the City of Glendale's website on Friday, February 29th, 2008 at 1 o'clock p.m.
Okay, let's have our first item, introductions, presentations.
Under introductions and presentations, we have a presentation of the 2008 Arbor Day Celebration Report from Glendale Beautiful.
I'm sorry, Gladys Wymore, President of Glendale Beautiful.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As you know, yesterday was our 58th Arbor Day celebration in Glendale. And Dottie, I'm sorry I didn't recognize you.
Oh!
The grounds at the Casa Adobe de San Rafael Historical Park were beautiful, and I would like to thank Gary Morello and his crew for taking such good care of the grounds there. Thanks to Mr. Chopchian and Coco for making the arrangements with Ross Ferris and his crew at Civic Auditorium for the setups. These young men from the Civic are always so nice and helpful. To date, we have received 133 trees this year, with 8 of these being specimen. My records show to date that we have given a total of 6,623 trees through the Arbor Day program. In the early days, they gave only maybe 1 or 2 trees. We also received the Tree City USA Award for the 24th consecutive year. And Glendale Beautiful's part in this is to hold the ceremony and to accept the proclamation from the city manager's office or the mayor. And there's still time to order trees for this year, Mr. Ropfogel, for this program. He always orders 3, but this time he was out of town. There's no nicer tribute to a person than to plant a tree in their honor. And you may call me. My number is 818-246-3634. And while I'm here, may I put a plug in for the Casa Adobe de San Rafael? As you know, Glendale Beautiful members are docents there. We're there the first Sunday of each month from 1 to 3, and in July and August, we're there every Sunday of the month. And I want to also thank you, the Parks Department, for all of the help that you give Glendale Beautiful. And we are so looking forward to going back to Glen Oaks, so hopefully that problem is solved soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really appreciate all the work you do in those trees, and the Tree City USA is really fantastic for the city of Glendale. Yes.
That was a wonderful program yesterday. I had a very nice time. Very nice. And everyone's so excited that gets a tree. You know, when they get the certificate, they come back. It's very nice.
And the Glen Oaks Community Building will be fantastic when you get back in there, so we are renovating it. So.
Little work to do. Okay, do we have any oral communications today?
We do not have any oral communication.
All right, then move on to, I guess, the consent item.
The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of the commission or audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such a request before a motion is proposed. And the lone consent item is the approval of the minutes of the commission regular meeting held on February 6, 2008.
Okay, has everybody on the commission had a chance to look them over?
Yes, I have.
Any comments or corrections?
No.
So moved. Okay, do you have a move, a second?
I'll second.
Okay, why don't we have roll call on the approval of the minutes?
Commissioner Khan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ropfogel,
Yes.
Commissioner Sharkey,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinanian,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ward.
Yes. Okay, number 5, our business agenda.
Under our business agenda, we have an action item, a proposed fee increase.
And I'll turn this over to Brittany Bellotti, the Recreation and Community Services Administrator.
Thank you, George. President Ward, members of the Commission. This is something a little unusual we're doing this year that we haven't done in previous years. Typically, we always bring the fees to the commission because it is the commission's authority to set fees. Usually we bring individual items as needed. This year is our cycle for developing our budget for the next 2 years. And as part of the budget development process, we were asked to provide a complete listing of all of our department fees and any proposed changes. So taking a look at the current fees and going back and taking a look at when some of these fees were established or last evaluated, in some cases, fees haven't been updated since 1999. And so we thought, you know what, this is probably a good time for us to take a look at, not only prepare these for our budget submittal, but to take a look at all of these fees as a whole and propose some recommendations for increases. Now, this is a complete list of all the fees that are set within the department, and I will go over each of the sections as needed, and then you can please ask me any questions that you have. But I wanted to at least begin by stating that most of these fees, I did do my best to add in here the date that they were either established or last evaluated. And we based the fee increase on a 3% per year, but not a cumulative 3%, because most of these are general fund programs. But this money does help to offset operating expenses and staff expenses accordingly. So in most cases, the result of the increase is anywhere from $5. I think the most extreme might be as much as $20 for one particular facility, but in most cases it's $5 or $10 maximum. We also did round the fee up to the nearest $5, and I did notice a couple of typos on the one page, and I'll point those out to you. Mostly for ease of payment, because to ask someone for $23.41 seems a little silly. So this is just to round the fee up. And again, since we're not doing a cumulative total, we figured that that was fair enough in most cases. The first section of fees on page 1 of the report pertains to community center fees, and this includes the Adult Recreation Center, Brand Studios, Maple Park, Pacific Community Center, Spar Heights Community Center, and then some miscellaneous fees. And again, here, as you see, that some of these fees were established as early as 2003 and have not been increased since that time. So again, in the right-hand column, most of these fees are only increasing by approximately $5 at this time per hour, and again, this revenue will help to offset those operating items. And I should note that another reason for doing these increases is that we have been informed that our operating budgets for the city the salaries and benefits will be increased by 3% based upon some MOU agreements with the unions, but our maintenance and operation costs will not be increased by COLA. So again, this money will help us to cover...
Meet the COLA.
Yeah, to meet our operating expenses. The Civic Auditorium is the next section. It starts on page 3. Now, these fees...
Interrupt you? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
absolutely.
The 3% then was for the cost of living adjustment? That's where you came up with that?
Yes.
Okay, so each year you were looking at 3%?
Yes. And like I said, it's not a cumulative. We literally said, for example, if the fee for the community center was established in 2003, we just simply said, that's been 5 years since it was updated, so 5 times 3 is 15%.
Okay.
Now, on similar facilities and similar rooms, are the prices similar? In other words, are we equitable across the city? If you have a classroom rental at the Adult Recreation Center, would it be equal to Pacific?
Yes, the
Some
answer
type
is
of-
yes, that most of these fees, ironically, when I came on as the administrator a few years ago, some of these fees had had not been established, and we established them based upon a square footage rate that we had established the fees at Maple Park and Pacific Park back in 2003.
Okay.
The only facility that the fees are a little lower are the Adult Recreation Center, and we're not proposing any major increases at this time, mostly because that facility is going to go down for construction.
Right.
And once the new building is built, then those facilities will be more comparable to the Pacific Center. The Spar Heights Center is now newly renovated, and so is
So
the
during the
Prince.
opening, there'll be a fee structure for the new building at that time?
Yes, yes. And then we can take a look at, making sure that, again, those room fees are based upon primarily a square footage rate, and then we take a look at, are there any amenities in the room? Is there a sink facility, or is it just a blank room? Is there a PA available? And that's how we look at establishing those fees. Yes, Commissioner Rottfogel.
In those places where the proposed fee is blank,
That means there is no proposed change at this time.
so in other words, for the locker deposit at Brand Studios is $10, it is still $10.
Yes.
So, because somebody could read that as the proposed fee being nothing.
Yeah.
So I wanted just to
So
make-
thank you for that clarification. Yes, for the purposes of this report, if it is left blank, that means there is no proposed change, that it will stay at the current rate.
The current fee.
That is listed in the current fee column. Thank you. Was there any more questions about the community center fees before we move on to the Civic Auditorium? Okay. So for the Civic Auditorium, we kind of took a little bit different approach to the Civic. The Civic is really kind of its own unique facility in that it is our large auditorium. Now, the fees here, you're going to see are slightly different than the structure that we had before, and this is based upon some of the feedback that we have received from our customers, or our non-customers, I should say. When individuals come into the facility, they want to rent the room, they check out the rates, and then they say, you know what, this is too expensive. And so the rates that we've proposed here, Ross and Laura did a really nice job at looking at other comparable facilities. The tough thing here is there really isn't multiple facilities out there to really compare apples to apples to. Santa Monica has a Civic Auditorium, so does Pasadena, but they are so uniquely different from each other and from our facility as well, whether in size, or amenities, etc. So for this particular structure, we kind of took a look at not only the rates that we offer, and this isn't so much a rate increase here as it's a rate consolidation. Because on page 4, you'll see that we're proposing to eliminate a number of fees. We used to focus on having a fee for each individual amenity that was provided, the room,
Right.
microphones, electrical, telephone. And so in this case, we have done more of a consolidation to where it is more palatable, in that it's kind of offering more of a package deal. And while the rates here will be comparable for any commercial rentals that we have, they'll be fairly close, because as you can see up in the top, we explain these rates that are listed in this report are typically what we consider a standard rate or a private non-commercial rate. And then any commercial rentals, such as a filming or we have our various shows that are held at the Civic, they are charged a commercial rate of 150%, and that has been established years ago in the department. And so these proposed fees will still keep the fees for the commercial rate comparable. However, because we've consolidated them and offered them more as a package for the individual private user, someone who's hosting a wedding or an anniversary party, this actually will give them a nice discount, because we're no longer charging for every table, every chair, every microphone.
Yeah.
When you pay for the room, you're getting all of those amenities included in the room.
That includes the labor and the setup, or will that be?
Yes, it includes for 2 staff members, during the entire event, use of all the tables and chairs that we have available, and the cost of renting the room. The only additional things that they would need to provide for or pay for, the new miscellaneous fees at the bottom of page 3, you'll see I've noted new under audio-visual package, power package, and portable generator. Those are things that you may or may not need for your rental. If you want to have access to the sound system, the screen, the stage lights, etc., then you would pay for the audio-visual package, which is a per-day fee, and that's much like the fees that are charged in the other civic centers. They're just a per-day fee, not
Hourly. And
per particular item, per hour, or etc. So again, we are hoping with this, and these kind of packaged rates, that this will provide a little bit of a discount to the private individual, hopefully some local folks, compared to what our previous fees were. Because we do understand that, while our fees may have been fairly comparable to those of some local hotels, when you look at the ballroom of a hotel with the chandeliers and the carpet, and you look at the Civic, they're not quite the same. And so, we don't provide food, they do provide food.
Right.
So we're wanting to see if we can make our rates a little bit more affordable for the private individual, and hopefully give them an opportunity to really weigh their choices and say, well, the Civic doesn't have these chandeliers and it doesn't have all this fancy, but it's more affordable for me. And so then they may now choose to go there. The other thing we're doing is we put together 2 wedding packages because weddings are fairly big. These packages not only include use of the room, but it actually includes, and let me explain, these other rates, some of them include the security guards. For example, these wedding packages include the security guards, the insurance. So if you're coming in as a new bride or a mother of a bride or father of a bride, or groom, and you want to come in, you're already under enough stress and strain trying to get a hold of the situation. This is a package deal for you. It includes all your tables, chairs, sound, security guards, insurance. You don't have to think about any of that. This is a flat rate. If you have, we say up to 450, but really if you want to go to 500, then you could add on additional tables and chairs as an amenity. But this is kind of giving you a package deal, and it actually saves you, between the 2 packages, it could save you as much as $800. So that, if you're planning a wedding, every dollar counts. And so we will continue to also look at other ways of providing some additional packages in the future, but this seemed to be the most obvious one for a wedding package.
this will also give the director a lot of latitude in promoting the facility.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Okay.
And eliminate some paperwork with all these little microphone.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, you
stage lighting
and when you
and-
get the permit itself, it's rather lengthy because
Yeah.
it does include all the disclaimers and the rules. But when you see this list of line item, line item, line item, it looks intimidating and, maybe I don't.
each little.
Yeah, it looks, and in some cases we've been accused of looking a little nickel and dime-ish, and so we don't want to come off as such.
Yeah, extension cord, $2.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, eliminate all that.
yeah.
Do we actually market our facility? I mean, is there like an active
Yeah.
marketing campaign to go out there and...
We do have Ross Ferris here as our manager of the facility. He and Laura Dalian, we do place ads in local papers and on local TV stations. A lot of times they invite us to come out. We have our leisure guide, and then they do have some marketing brochures that they send out. They actively make calls and send out brochures, and while I do think there are some new things that we can do to explore to sell the facility, we thought we would, one of the biggest complaints we got again was it's too expensive, and so we wanted to take a look at that first, see if we can get those fees adjusted, and then make more of an effort to kind of get out there and campaign and market to sell that facility. But yes, we do acknowledge that we need to make more of an effort in that realm.
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Raptola?
Okay.
Do you have some?
We still have the presentation.
Okay, so I'm,
Yes. You can bring in your own caterer. We do have one particular caterer who has worked with us in the past and is fairly familiar with the facility, but you can bring in your own food vendor. And so in that case, that's why you would just pay to use of the kitchen and get in there and have your own food. But again, because we don't provide food ourselves, but we are not limited to a list of food providers.
Not having a list of approved caterers, has that caused a problem?
Not to my knowledge.
You can hear from our manager. I know we had caterers that wanted to use the commercial kitchen at one time.
Good afternoon. Actually, that is a tremendous benefit to us, not having a list of approved caterers. They can bring in whoever they want. That gives a lot of places, particularly hotels, you're locked in to their food, and their markup is incredible. So by having the ability to bring in your own food, we close a lot of sales that way, and the bride and the groom or whoever, they save money. That helps us a lot.
Yeah.
But it hasn't caused a problem by not, somebody bringing in a caterer that leaves the place a mess or anything like that, that hasn't been really a problem?
Well, we certainly have situations where people may leave the room messy, but that's what we collect a security deposit
Yeah,
for.
there's a deposit.
Right.
on it.
And there are, then we would deduct that from their security deposit.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Ross.
You bet.
Were there any other questions on the Civic Auditorium, please?
No, I'm glad that you're putting the packages together and eliminating a lot of those.
Yeah, that wedding package I'm actually kind of excited about because, a lot of times folks will want to come in the morning and decorate,
Yeah.
leave, go have the ceremony, come back. And so this actually provides them from 9 a.m. to the morning, in the morning until, I believe, as late as 1 a.m. Because we have an ordinance that you have to be cleaned up and out by 1
Yeah, they have the
a.m.
whole day.
And so this literally gives them the entire day as a package without having to pay per hour whether you're there or not there. So I'm hoping that will be something that people will be interested in. The next page is page 5 for the sports complex and Stengel Field fee schedule. As you can see here, the fees for fields, the only one we're looking at is Stengel Field. And I actually had trouble going back and researching Stengel Field, and I found out the last date it was established was 1999.
Ooh, okay.
So, but this shouldn't have too much of an impact on our users because most of the time people don't necessarily pay for Stengel Field. For example, our little leagues, etc., during their league season, they don't have to pay for the use of many of our facilities, or they're given a discount, and those fees are already established and in place. And so this really should not affect them at all in most cases.
These are more outside tournaments?
This is more outside tournaments, or if a filming company wants to come in and they want the whole stadium kind of thing, that's where it's going to come into play. But most often than not, we just issue permit to those approved user groups, and this fee is not going to affect any rate that they currently pay for use of the field.
It's also apparently an adult league, baseball league, and
Yeah.
there's also a potential co-ed league that may be coming in.
Yeah, so a nighttime fee would be almost $120 a
Yeah.
Lot.
Our biggest users of Stengel are the college and the school district, and we already have working arrangements with them that
reciprocal agreement on the
Correct.
facilities.
Rated in.
Yes. So, again, this will not affect them as well. The only increase on page 6 that you see for citywide fields, again, that rate is going up by $5 an hour. But if you are one of our youth groups, again, this increase should not affect you during your season. It would only affect you in your off-season.
Okay. Now, we just recently, I thought we addressed a fee increase at the artificial soccer fields.
That was last established last August, and that it was incorporated in here, and the fees for the artificial turf fields
Yeah,
are
we had
not.
some security issue in our last
Yes.
commission.
And that is listed on here. That is our adult soccer league fee. That is listed under the current fee column under miscellaneous fees on page...
Okay, so it's captured in this document?
Yes, it's captured in here, and there's no proposed increase because we just established that.
I think Gabrielle's here, but I believe we do have security right now at this point. Do we not? We're hiring security for the adult leagues.
Right, we discussed
Part
that.
of the fee, but...
Good afternoon.
Yes.
The adult leagues aren't actually scheduled to begin until the end of March, based on the timeline, so that we could mail out all of the flyers and advertisements and get our managers' meetings together and get people registered. We haven't actually hired the security company. We know which one we'll go with because they're a current vendor with the city. We don't have them working quite yet because the league hasn't started.
Okay, fantastic. I was just looking at the fee to make sure it was captured
Yes.
right.
Well, I made sure to add that in. That was one of the first ones put in there, so, but thank you. If you have no further questions on
Any other
these...
questions?
What's the difference between baseball 1 and baseball 2, soccer 4 and 5?
These are the fields up at the complex. There are 3 baseball fields and 2 soccer fields. So this simply denotes field 1, 2, 3.
Right, but
And field 1 is a larger
more.
field.
Yeah.
One's a
What's
hard
the
ball.
difference? Why is it more?
Because they're different sizes.
Gabrielle?
Yeah.
Field 1 is a baseball field. We have the ability to move the bases out for high school versus adult. Fields 2 and 3 are softball fields. They're smaller fields. They don't have a pitching mound. And on the soccer fields, Field 4 is a smaller field. Field 5 is just larger, so that's the difference in price.
Thank you.
I just have just something I'm curious about. On page 7, why are the trash fees eliminated? Is that part of
Oh, well,
package? Or?
no. If you're ready to move on, I can...
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Going
just,
to-
I thought
yeah.
you were
Got to
finished.
that
I'm
page.
Haven't
sorry.
gone there yet, Daddy.
Oh, my goodness.
We're reading ahead.
Daddy is moving us along today. Okay, well, moving along to page 7. This is park and special use facility fee schedule. And I do apologize. I noticed on this page that some of these fees, particularly up at the top note, is
Or not
$33.
$5.
They're not rounded up. So those will need to be rounded up. The fees that are listed as 33 will need to go to 35, 38 to 40. There is a fee listed under film permits that says 224 that will need to go to 225. And wedding permits in the last section, 110, will need to go to 117. And acreage fee, 30 to 35. I hope I didn't go through that too quickly, but essentially I wanted to note it for the record, and those fees will be adjusted to the nearest $5 increment. That is a very good question that you had regarding the trash removal. You know, that was really kind of an internal discussion of, well, if we are going to have a fee for the staff and trash, do we need to charge extra to dump the trash? And so it's now incorporated into one, because it seems silly to charge, this is the amount of fee to actually put it in the dumpster, this is the fee to collect the trash can. So that's why we combine those. If you'll see trash detail staff, eliminate, trash dump, eliminate, and we have a flat rate. And that is actually, it looks much higher, but that is based upon most typical park use, because when these fees were originally established, this trash detail staff fee, the salaries for Gary's guys was much less expensive.
Much lower.
And also, I
now.
think what has tended to happen in the past was, we'll openly admit that sometimes the communication between how long did the guys need to work a particular event, based upon what the event was, didn't always take place. Now that we have really good communication between Monique as the new supervisor and Gary and his crew, we have a better understanding of what it really takes to get in there early, having to be there after the event to also go around and clean up. And so this is a more accurate reflection of what typical fees on average are.
Now, is this on a size of an event, an all-day event?
This would be for an event, for example, at Verdugo Park, when we have
Major
a major event.
event. So if you had a wedding and a picnic in a park,
You
don't
this
have
would
to
not
pay
pertain to you.
$1,100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is more what you would consider like a large-scale special event. The car show, the Kiwanis Car Show, the Duck Splash, North Laurent, those types of events, the larger events. Otherwise, if you're just having a picnic, this fee isn't going to be applied to your permit. If you're having your wedding, this fee is not applied to your permit. So it's...
If I can cover the wedding, the picnic, the party with what I have on staff, that's why it's not charged extra.
Or whatever your regular maintenance would be at
They're
that
already
facility.
there.
It's, yeah.
If they weren't there, somebody else would be there using the ball field or using the softball field, so that's why it's changed.
So this is above and
This is
beyond.
above and beyond that I have to add people.
Okay.
I was also informed that I believe that when this rate was originally established, it was based on a per-hour rate for that employee rather than an overtime rate for that employee, because most of Gary's employees work Monday through Friday, and when they have to come in on the weekend, then it's an overtime cost.
Okay.
So this will absorb that additional expense as well.
I know, okay, so we combined the two trash fees into one trash detail?
Yes.
Why didn't we do the same with the no parking, the posting of the signs, and then the signs themselves?
We didn't because renters actually have the option of whether or not they want to post the signs themselves, and many permit holders do take advantage of that option. We do have a separate, like I said, where it says no parking signage, signs only. That covers the printing of the signs, and that is what it costs our department to have those signs printed up through our graphics department, and any internal charges that they charge us. And then the posting, for example, the Kiwanis, they choose to get volunteers to post to the neighborhood. We give them the instructions, they go out and post the signs, and that's at no cost to us, so we are not going to charge them for that. However, if they say, you know what, we can't find anybody, we'd like for you guys to do it, then this will cover the amount of staff members, again, to go out, because in most cases, we're going to have to pay overtime to send people out and post the neighborhood for the various facilities. So this gives them the option to give them a break on the fee.
Yeah.
Were there any other questions on any of the fees? Let me just highlight on page 8, the aquatics program fees, the day camp program. We are proposing some fee increases, and these are actually based upon some of our mostly on our direct cost increase. For example, the price of buses has gone up because the price of gas has gone up, or admission tickets has gone up into theme parks, and so this will help to cover that additional cost. In the case of the aquatics program, again, the cost of purchasing lifeguard materials or just supplies needed to operate the program. These fees have not been increased, again, since 2003. They are not so overly dramatic that we feel that they're going to cause any community outrage, but they are necessary to help offset the cost of those programs, because these, in most cases, are enterprise programs. In other words, they have to sustain themselves. They have to be able to pay for themselves. There are some portions of the aquatics program that are covered in our general fund, but in our day camp program, they are all supported through our enterprise fund. There is no general fund support. So the cost of what the participant pays for the program itself.
Okay, it looks like really the lessons are what increased in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other
And-
fees are the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Again, even with the day camp, while we went through this process, we did comparatively go through and look at what other cities' fees are, and we are still right at par, and in some cases, we're a little less expensive than some of the programs held locally, even in Burbank. So I think we're right on the money there. No proposed changes for any of the senior classes. We are looking at increasing the cruise night car registration fee, which has not increased since the program was established.
Okay.
So this is a $5 increase. There is a new fee that we're proposing for cruise night, which is a late registration fee. And really what that is the folks that show up the day of the event
Okay.
in the holding lot. We've never charged an additional fee for somebody showing up the day of, but we actually do have to put folks out there to meet them, greet them, collect their money, find them a spot, get them parked. So we do feel that it is fair to say, listen, if you're going to not plan in advance and you show up the day of, pay a couple dollars extra.
Is 5 enough?
We're going to start with 5 for now. We'll see how it gets,
Yeah.
how it's swallowed,
What the acceptance is, yeah.
and go from there. Then, if there are no questions there, I provided simply for information purposes on pages 10 and 11. While this report does show all the fees we have, this is a complete listing on pages 10 and 11 of all the free programs, facilities that we provide throughout the year. And I think it's important to note that while, you look at this comprehensive list, but most of these things are for rentals and for programs that are enterprise programs, whereas all of these things on pages 10 and 11 are general fund supported, free to families throughout the community. So I think it's important to note those as well. It's quite a substantial list.
Really is.
Yeah, it's nice to actually have it all in
Boost Saturday.
one site and look at it all.
Skip Both Saturday is actually an intergenerational program that they hold at Spar Heights, and it's been working fairly well. So, gets the seniors with the kids, and it's a good thing. Rodney, did you have a question?
I was just thought, in terms of what you started off, the presentation,
Yes.
this is for you guys to be able to project for your fiscal year.
Yes.
So the budget and the increases. So that means that until a year from now, or whenever, we're not going to see you guys coming back with fee increases.
The hope there is no. So what we're hoping to do, the fiscal year is a 2-year cycle. We're hoping to, if we do want to come back for proposed fees, that we try to do it in a comprehensive list on an annual basis, or maybe even every 2 years. We will only come back to you with those needs, whether they're urgent needs, or in the case, as I noted with the Adult Recreation Center, once that facility opens, and fees need to be established at that time, so on an individual basis as needed, but you won't see them coming as frequently as they have been in the past.
We may find that one of the fees or two of the fees aren't working, so we could come back to you.
Lower or raise,
Right.
yeah, adjust it so that we get...
Yeah, I like this. I mean, it seems, from my perspective, these increases are very minimal.
Minimal.
I mean, that's not an issue at all. But I like, just in terms of presenting something to us, it's not piecemealed out. I like it just being comprehensive. We can look at it. It seems very fair and very reasonable to be able to do that. And if you have to come back in the future, so be it. But just as kind of a policy to come to us like this, I think it's very good.
In most other cities, this is the way it's done. It actually goes to the city council as one fee schedule, citywide. Everything's there in the fee schedule.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Sure makes it a lot easier for us as well internally, so we're not always having to, when was the last time this fee was, looked at, et cetera.
Kind of a rates and fees
very
manual
thorough.
and keep it up. Okay, well, this is an action item in front of us. Do we have any other comments?
Just on the posting of the no parking signs?
Yes.
Instead of using our staff where we would have to possibly pay overtime, have we thought about using anyone from the Glendale Youth Alliance, or do we use them?
We have used them on occasion in the past for various events. I don't believe we've looked into utilizing their assistance for this particular item, but certainly it's not out of the realm of possibility. We can take a look at that.
Yeah, it just seems like that would be something that they should be capable of doing, and maybe at a lower rate.
Well,
Keeping the fee the way it is.
I think that's a fairly decent suggestion. We will definitely look into that. So.
Farm out the work.
Fairly decent.
Yeah.
Means that's okay.
I'm more than happy to look into that.
But that's an option that whoever's making the permit could use.
Yeah, just a suggestion.
Yeah, I do know that when we utilize the services of GYA, they do typically require that we also pay for what you would deem kind of a crew chief.
They also have an administrative cost, too.
Yes, and also a lot of times they will meet at one particular location and van them together, so sometimes there are some additional costs, as Gary had mentioned, but it is absolutely worth looking into, and it might actually result in some savings to a particular customer. So, sure.
Okay, do we have a motion on?
Sure. I'd make a motion to approve the proposed fee increases for fiscal year 2008, 2009.
I'll second it.
With the amendments that, from page 7,
That's correct, yeah, where
the changes on page 7,
yeah.
and also noting that if there's no proposed fee, all that means is that there's no proposed increase.
Correct.
It doesn't eliminate the fee.
Yes.
That sounds good.
Relatively.
That's a
Okay.
long motion.
I think it's been adopted here, or let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Khan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ropfogel,
Sure.
Commissioner Sharkey,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinanian,
He stepped out,
and Commissioner Ward.
yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. I think that's great for the next fiscal year. Hopefully, it'll make everything sound for the department.
Thank you.
Let's see, next item is item B.
Item B is our reports for information only, and our first item is a report on Brand Park security.
And I will call up George Balteri, our project manager for this, and just let you know that we did hold a community meeting on Saturday, February 16th, and had about 50 or 60 people at this community meeting, just to gather information about the action we took to help alleviate some of the problems at Brand Park, how it was going, what they'd like to see happen, and some of our future proposed changes to the park. And so I'll turn this over to George, and he can give you a more detailed description of the meeting itself.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, President Ward and Commissioners. George Balteria, Senior Project Manager. We, in our efforts to address park safety and security issues at several parks, Brand Park obviously being one of the largest parks in the system, and has some issues that we wanted to discuss with the residents. And so on the 16th of February, we provided a forum so that the neighbors could come in and tell us what they think about the current improvements that have been made to the park to address security, and then get their opinions on, what more do they feel it could be done there at the park to make it a more comfortable environment for them and visitors, and just things that they see day to day. They living, obviously in the adjoining houses and neighborhoods and streets. So some of the items that we shared with them, again, to address the current improvements, was the initial contact station or stationing of a guard at the entrance at Grandview, and having a greeter, a security guard there and present from the afternoon into the evening till the park closes. And that was a large improvement. The other improvements that have been made to the park have been the directional routing of traffic through the park. So essentially, the Grandview entrance is a primary entrance, and from there, you go in through the park, you circulate through the park however you do, but you cannot exit the western entrance anymore. In fact, you can't. I don't believe you can go in through that area. It's a secured situation, and I think it's only city vehicles will open that up if they have a legitimate use to go up through that area. But essentially then they have to go through the parking lot, the lower parking lot by the ball fields, and then come back down the opposite side of the boulevard, the main drag here, and then exit. So we don't have a flurry of people blasting down through the western Avenue exit anymore. And that's another one. The lighting that's kind of in the park proper, essentially that lights up this area around the library, has been improved, and essentially a lot of the fixtures that were defective have been repaired, and our facilities maintenance department is watching those a little more carefully. We did have a good suggestion by one of the residents to actually see if they could number those light fixtures individually, like we do. Gary has his staff numbered most of them, in fact, all of them probably, out in the other parks, but because the facilities maintenance through Public Works is maintaining these, they don't have the same kind of numbering system, and in fact, they're not identified. But if they were identified, then the residents could actually call us and tell us which ones are down, and then they could be addressed quicker. So that was a real good suggestion. The other, just this whole thing about traffic not exiting the Western Avenue exit has made a lot of the residents that are south of there very happy. So they're really pleased with that because now they don't have that thoroughfare just to blast on down the road. And so they came in and they were very pleased. The other thing that was done is that the basketball court that's over in this vicinity was removed. And that made a lot of people over here very happy in this area of the neighborhood, very happy. So the basketball court has been removed, and they really hope we don't ever put it back there again. So those are some of the positive things that came out of the meeting, and so they did appreciate that we got a lot of nice compliments, for the efforts of all the department to get those improvements made. The other items that were of concern, and we actually conducted a survey. We had about 56 people present at the meeting, and we received surveys from them. And we conducted a survey at the time, and then we also have received about 20 additional emailed surveys in. So we thank them for those, and we are still compiling the results. However, right now it appears that their main concern, as addressed, as expressed at the public meeting, is that they would like to see a greater ranger and police presence at the park for patrol and just that physical presence, walking down around through the ball field area and things like this. So that seems to be one of the greatest concerns. The other consistent concern that was expressed was providing additional lighting in the park. They feel that, especially this area, which is very active, this is where we have, I believe this is where we have our day camp programs and things like this. So we have a large children's play area here, the restroom. The restroom, unfortunately, has some of the only fixtures in that area. So this eastern area, this triangle, they consider a critical area to improve the lighting in. It's very dark. And likewise, additional lighting in other areas of the facility, but this seems to be the primary area of concern right now. Some of the other items that we were looking at that we had posed to them were the improvements to the gate, putting in gates at the entrance, Grandview, and also gates at Western. Right now you can walk right around those gates and have entrance after everybody's gone or we close down for the night. And the recommendation to fence this area and put in gates that are decorative, as well as providing a small guard station at the entrance that would, fit in with the theme of the overall library. We're high on their priorities, so they really wanted to see that's as they rank in order. We actually received, and as we got in more of the surveys that we took, we had mentioned the elimination of the basketball court. Some people were happy that it was gone. They don't ever want to see it come back. They don't feel Brand Park needs one. But on the surveys, we actually received in writing requests that it be replaced and be placed someplace in the park. They're not sure where. We've come up with some areas. I think Mr. Chapshin was considering maybe this area above the ball field. that might be a good area, or another area that, that we haven't considered yet. I'm not sure where a good area would be, but it's kind of a typical element of most large community parks. And so we don't have one there, and that, like I said, I didn't think that the residents were that hot about it, but apparently they like a basketball court. They're not sure where it should go, but they would like to see one probably return. Let's see here. The installation, we discussed the installation of security cameras, and if we put in the gates, then we were looking at installing cameras in several locations in the park. And that didn't, while the residents understood this and what we would want to do, perhaps have a camera in this vicinity here to get an idea what's going on, plus this restroom, perhaps one around the tea house and Friendship Garden, maybe one up by the doctor's house, then perhaps in this vicinity here behind the library, this picnic area, we would consider those areas as prime areas, maybe even this area once the lighting was improved. But you have to have good quality lighting that, images are picked up well at night and they're recordable and so on. And once you get into the camera mode, as we talked about last meeting, the camera aspect, once you commit to a camera system, then you have to be able to do something with the data, the images. It would obviously be a real plus in real time for any kind of police patrol or ranger patrol. They could access those cameras and see the images, what's going on, and before they enter into a situation where they could get overwhelmed, then they could actually see who and what was going on in the park. So those are all pluses. It wasn't, again, there was not a lot of people demanding cameras and high-tech security measures, but from a management standpoint, it kind of makes sense perhaps to ramp up, maybe start in with a couple cameras initially and then see how things work out and then proceed there and maybe look at expanding that system. Similar to what we could consider for improving the lighting at the park. So I think those are the main highlights, other than some people did acknowledge that perhaps posting additional rules and regulation signs at the park where they're visible and so on could be a good thing to help, interpret and provide a first level information to the public, so they feel that would be good, especially for first-time visitors to the park. The other item of concern of the neighbors is this area over here on the west side of the park that's traditionally been used as an informal soccer area, which I believe when it's used as informal by our picnickers or families and stuff, it's great. It's a nice picnic area and quiet area too. However, when it becomes a formalized group that comes in and takes over this area, these neighbors on this side of the park have actually expressed concerns that we should make some improvements there or to prevent that from occurring, or look at citing them or taking other actions, because they get pretty rowdy. And they drag in equipment and goals and things like this and stash them in the bushes and in the fencing and all that kind of stuff. And if we don't see it, then it just stays there, so for a while. One other item of concern, they felt that perhaps prohibiting smoking in the park would also be a positive thing. And they felt that would help curtail a lot of, as I expressed, I think a couple of folks said just there are young people that come here, or just people that come here from other adjoining cities to smoke in Brand Park. So that's pretty much this.
Didn't they say Burbank doesn't allow smoking? I
Right,
believe?
yeah. And there's a couple other.
City of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is kind of the next, we are preparing a report to go to council to address safety and security measures proposed, and some of the things we could do at about 9 of the parks, Branda's being one of those parks being included in that report.
I've got some comments, and then there's probably some other comments from the commission. Was the basketball court that was taken out of commission a full court or a half court?
It was a full non-regulation.
Full court, baskets on both ends. So if you were to possibly relocate one within the park, maybe it could be configured as a half court, or even put on one of the parking locations and maybe have a concrete put on so it'd be dual use. It doesn't look like all that parking is used all the time, and then you don't have to take off green area or something, and you could site it closer to a building or staffed
A lower
location.
parking lot is not, oftentimes is not used fully, unless you have a baseball game on Saturdays or something like that.
Weekends it is, though.
Weekends is when it's used. During after-school hours, it's pretty sparse during the week. But weekends, like I said, is when it's used. So, yeah, you could use
It would be a
dual parking.
It's a good idea. That the concern would be leaking oil and that type
Slip
of
and
thing.
fall
slip
on the
and fall.
footing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing is, I know you mentioned the seasonal or hourly security at the gate. It didn't look like it was all day, and also then you mentioned cameras later on, and I know staff hours and salaries escalate, and once you get an electronic system in there, it's a one-time purchase, and monitoring or something else. It may be cost-effective to be able to then limit the hours that you would actually have to staff that greeter or the person at the gate.
Yeah, just a comment from what I heard from the people that were at the meeting is they really liked the presence at the gate and felt that it did make a big difference in terms of the activity, the unwanted activity at the park. So we're going to have to look at where's the balance in that. Do we provide it? Don't we? Are the cameras going to be enough? And maybe more ranger presence or police presence would eliminate the need for a greeter up front. So we'll have to look at the cost as well. I mean, these are things that aren't in the budget right at this point. We're paying for this security person out of salary savings. So we're going to go back.
Yeah, I know it can add up real fast, especially during winter months or something when the hours are limited. The last comment had to do with the smoking ordinance, and because Brand Park is located in the chaparrals and up against the foothills, even a mountain fire district rating of, because of the potential of brush fires, that would be one of the ideal parks to put some type of a smoking regulation at.
Absolutely.
And I'm in favor of that. So, other comments?
I do. What are the actual hours of operation of that park?
I was at 7 a.m. to 10.
It's open at 7 a.m. Frequently, people come in 6,
Earlier than that.
6:30, but the actual opening of the restrooms and the opening of the buildings is 7, and then it closes at 10.
Is it, and I'm just trying to get a sense of, obviously incidents occur at various times, but is there certain times that it's more prevalent, like in the evenings or weekends, or, can you pinpoint when the issues occur primarily?
Well, without Russ here, and having, sometimes...
Yeah, Eric and Russ both
they
patrol the area, but it's obviously after the park personnel have left, which is 4 o'clock, it starts. I've gone through there at 5 or 6 after I'm on the way home or whatever and pull back through, and you can see groups starting to gather sometimes, and that's, again, as it gets to be summer, they'll be staying later because it's warmer.
One of the options we are looking at is closing it sooner.
Yeah.
That's what I
There's
was...
no need for people to be in that park when it's dark.
Right.
There is the library hours, so we'll have to work with the library, and potentially some classes that we have, lifelong learning classes, but will have to try to work around that.
That's where I was kind of going with this. I was looking at limiting hours and seeing what that happens.
That was a suggestion by a couple of people at the meeting as well.
We've done that at several parks, and it seemed to have cut the graffiti down, because if you can't get in at dusk or, shortly after dusk, there's no reason to be around, and you can't see what you're doing, you can't...
Quite frankly, it's dark, you shouldn't be
Is the ball field lit?
No.
Okay, so it's a daylight use. Yeah, then
That
was
was
appropriate.
intentional. When we made the improvements back in 1992, the neighbors on the other side of Mountain, just on the south side there, didn't want us to put in any lights at all. You know, they said they would have stopped our work on the ball field itself had we gone ahead with that, and so we just didn't do that at the
So it's
time.
programmed as a day-use
Correct.
facility.
The other thing it would do is if we put in gates, let's say at the western and the Grandview entrances, that would also prevent the neighbors from coming in early. So it would close them off. Some of them like to get up there early. They like to go up onto the stairs of the library and exercise, and do the routine there. A lot of them like to go up and hit the trail, the trails. And then again, some people said that, but a lot of people come up with their dogs, and as soon as they get on the trail or, up far enough, then they let their dogs off the leash and they take off, So that's another concern. So that would just be something, a management thing that we would have to, work with.
I also liked your comment about the smoking and addressing it in this particular park. And I'm not sure how that translates in terms of a recommendation or a comment that gets carried forward.
We
'Cause
certainly-
that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, and when we go to city council, we will let them know if that's something the commission would like
Sure.
to send forward
I
as a
want to
recommendation.
agendize it as a future discussion item on our commission to discuss smoking in all the parks and come up with some position.
And
Certainly would make it easier for Gary.
Yeah, that would be quite helpful. I can get emails from all the park patrons who are disgusted with the cigarette butts that are left out there, and I tell them I can't. I pick up what I can, but I can't chase people around.
It may be more controversial than some of the parks down in the south part of
Sure.
the city, but up there, I'm not sure it'll be controversial at all.
Yeah, with the
No, it
brush.
is a fire hazard up there.
Okay, any other comments from our commissions?
And what we can do is also send you an email. We currently have the security report scheduled for March 18, I believe, but we may not make that deadline, but I'll send you emails
Full council.
on when it's going to go to council, because it will encompass more than just Brand Park. It's going to encompass all the parks that are in need of security at this point. We're seeing more and more conflict in users, young people, residents around.
Car park, other places, yeah.
Some of the master planning, workshops we've been having for several other parks, this actually comes up in those meetings. They they do comment about lighting and stuff, but just security and smoking, all these are real common concerns, seems, with most of the residents.
Okay, thank you very much. Oop. Okay, next item on B, number 2, please.
Our next item is a report for information only on the restroom renovation projects.
And what we've done is we have 5 restrooms that we are currently renovating. 3 restrooms, 2 community buildings, 1 restroom that Lila is actually renovating. But Audrey Gold-Nazarian, our project manager, and Hagop is the project manager on Pelanconi. Audrey is the project manager on New York, Glen Oaks, and Dunsmore. Wanted them to give you an update on the work that's being done and some of the problem areas as well that we've seen with the
Briefly.
project.
We're not quite there yet,
All
but
right. Audrey.
good afternoon, members of the commission, President Ward. I'm Audrina Gold-Nazarian, project manager. I'm here to report on improvements on various park sites. It's a bundle of projects that we have taken on. It includes New York Park Restroom Building, Glorieta Park Restroom Building, Pelanconi Park Restroom Building, and Dunsmore and Glen Oaks community buildings. The 5 projects are in this improvement effort, and we developed the schematic design package in-house and then went out for a pricing proposal, and TLD Construction was awarded the contract back in July of '07. They are the contractor on board. The combined cost of all projects together, including project management fees and construction cost, is about $1.9 million. The scope of work at practically all of these sites included ADA and Title 24 accessibility compliance work, as well as some renovation of the existing buildings. We issued the notice to proceed back in September 27 of 2004,
And currently, I'm happy to report that construction is complete at Glorieta, New York, and Pelanconi Parks, which were fast-tracked because those 3 sites were funded by Prop 12 grant funding with a deadline of March 31st of 2008. So we are complete at this point, and we will show you some photos of the improvements, and we're going to show you some before and after photos so you can compare and see what we did. This is New York Park, and this represents a non-compliant restroom stall at New York Park, and as you can see, not only is it non-compliant, but it's extremely old, and the fixtures, they weren't operational at times. And this is New York Park, the exterior view. We made some improvements to the roof framing. There were a lot of water damage, dry rot, and framing damage at the roof. We re-roofed, and we painted the exteriors. We also installed a compliant drinking fountain. On the interiors, what we did was this is accessibility work. We improved the accessibility by installing accessible restroom fixtures, and including the hand dryer, as you can see, and we have compliant partitions and security gates, wrought iron security gates. This photo is of Glorieta Park. I'm going to defer to Hagop to take you through the photos and explain the project.
Good afternoon, Commission members. Again, this is the damage or the condition of the roof as it was prior to starting the construction on the project. And this is what the project looks like today. Basically, most of this roof was replaced, and we've renovated it. And also what we've gone ahead and added security gates, as Adriana mentioned earlier. We actually had to enlarge the opening on this end to allow for ADA accessibility, and the old gate used to be in this location, and sorry, the picture is was in the shadow, and the gate was removed from this area out to this location, again, for 2 reasons: one for security, and the other to allow ADA accessibility, basically. Some of the interior shots of new tile work, new toilet fixtures, and sinks, and also one feature that you might have missed on the New York. A lot of the fixtures that we had, all the plumbing work was exposed. All the plumbing work with these new restrooms are hidden behind this wall, and they're accessible from the maintenance area. So they're completely kind of away from vandal resistance, so no one can tamper with them. And the last restroom is Pelanconi again. Those were the fixtures I was just talking about. And at Pelanconi, what we've gone ahead is remove all the tile that was on the exterior of the building and replaced it with stucco. We've also replaced this section of the roof. And when I took this picture, it was actually earlier in the morning, and there was a little bit of moisture on the stucco. That's what this sort of staining looks there. And some of the interior shots, and again, new tile work, new mirrors, sinks. This is an ADA accessible hand dryer. The one that we had over at Glorieta actually protruded about 8 inches, and this is only 4 inches since it falls in the path of travel to the sink. That pretty much concludes this project and all 3 projects.
Oh, great.
Were there soap dispensers on those sinks? It looked like there were soap dispensers there, were they?
Soap dispensers we will install later because
Pet peeve of mine, soap dispensers, because
They get vandalized.
they get vandalized, and then the problem after that happens, if they're vandalized and there's soap in them, soap falls on the floor. Somebody walks in and doesn't see the soap on the floor and falls down and slips. And it just becomes, one mess becomes another mess. And, it, much as I'd like to provide that for the people, it doesn't stay. They don't stay whole.
We're looking at other options, I think, and we'll see if we can find another option for potential soap.
Possibly something recessed into the wall or something where they can't get to it. Right now, no.
So these were the three, and then there's two more within facilities that are being addressed still?
That's correct. Dunsmore and Glen Oaks community buildings are currently being remodeled, and those remodeling projects are a little bit more extensive, and we focused our efforts on the three restrooms because of the deadline, associated grant deadline. And so now that they are complete, we now will shift our focus towards those two buildings. And along the way, we have just recently found some unforeseen conditions that are a little bit beyond your regular, everyday unforeseen conditions. There are some structural issues involved, and we are analyzing those issues, and we will be addressing what to do and obviously fix the problems. And we'll come back to you with the complete report when it's done.
Like most of the facilities we go into, the deferred maintenance has really caused a problem over the years. We're now finding that we can't just go in and just do, a minor repair. It ends up being floor replacements, roof replacements.
And things.
Yeah, this was supposed to be a cosmetic sort of a remodeling, but it's ended up a little bit more serious. Structural issues have arisen, but we're addressing those issues.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, thank
Is there no more questions? Thank you very much.
Questions, Commission? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. And our next report?
Our next report is a CIP budget update.
And I'll be very brief, Commissioner Ward. As you know, we've talked about the CIP budget, the capital project, and I've outlined some of the things that we were asking for. There are a couple things that have changed since then, and what I'd like to do is direct your attention to, let's say, it says slide 7. Let's back up. Slide 5. We currently have, if you look at the slide, $500,000 in park upgrade maintenance money. That's in there for 08, 09, 10, and it ramps up to $1 million in 2012. And these are currently what we have in the CIP budget. The later slides show you. If you'll go to slide 14, and this page here. It shows some of the additional requirements for the CIP budget, and you'll see Gladys Drive settlement, Gladys Drive slope repair. These were all unforeseen circumstances that we had to deal with in the CIP, and they are substantial. So what we did was we went back and took a look at all of our CIP requests, and as a result, the Parks Department, we had an additional $250,000 a year plugged in for park maintenance, which would have given us $650,000. We lost the first 2 years of that. We had $2.5 million in new park development, which was just for new parks, mini parks, or purchase of land. We lost that for next year, but we do have the $2.5 million for the year after. We also lost the $1 million for Maryland Mini Park. What we thought is we're working with the BMW dealer. That may work out where the BMW dealer does subterranean parking and also pays for the park development itself.
Like a turnkey.
So those are the impacts to the Parks Department at this point. And like other departments, we're all impacted. Public Works was impacted just as much as we were. Just thought I'd give you that update. The other thing that came out of it is AYSO really pushed for more soccer fields. And we had plugged in $5.5 million for a project up at Freeway Site A, which would have built 2 soccer fields, and we had it, the preliminary stage being 2010 and building it in 2011. We pushed that date up for the EIR and some of the preliminary work we'd have to do before we started construction. So I think we'll see $250,000 next year and $250,000 a year after to start the process of the EIR design work, soils and all the
Specifically for
preliminary
the expansion of the soccer?
for the soccer fields up there. Yeah.
Now, what about our pool? Is that still?
The pool is still in the budget. It was voted
Okay.
yesterday, so the Pacific Park pool is in there, as is money for the aquatics facility at a later date.
Okay.
If you'll go to, sorry, let me take it as slide 31. If you see slide 31, park upgrade maintenance, that shows the zeroing out of the $250,000 for 0809. And then the next slide shows that the 250 continues all the way to 2017. So we do have an additional $2 million over the next 10 years for park upgrades, additional park upgrade.
And as these facilities come online, there may be some budget for it. I mean, if we get a pool, you're going to have to aquatic staff and everything else that goes
Right.
with it.
One of the things we do have to do, I have to give to the city manager a list of all of these projects and the potential maintenance costs and operational costs of those projects.
Yeah.
You know, as you know, a pool can be over $500,000 in terms of maintenance and
Oh, yeah, just
operations.
in utilities.
Can we go back to the soccer fields? You mentioned that got pushed up. I didn't watch or see any of that. So you had budgeted for that, and that got moved up?
Right. If you go to the next slide, slide 33 on the next page, you'll see Freeway Park Site A listed. We had $500,000 in 2011 to start the EIR preliminary work and all that. That is being pushed up to 09, $250,000 for 2009 and $250,000 for 2010 to get that work out of the way so we can start as soon as possible with the
Ours
construction.
says 08, 09.
08,
So
I'm sorry, yeah.
Right.
That was the note I made, and then that was changed.
So it's actually, okay.
And so then the other soccer field,
Columbus.
the joint, is that what it was, Columbus? That still is moving forward,
That,
too?
right, that is still
Okay.
in our budget, and that's scheduled for 2009 and 2010. We have $400,000 budgeted for 2009 and $3.1 million for 2010 to complete it. So those are the impacts at this point. The other thing is, if you'll take a look at the Aquatics Center on
Yeah.
slide 35,
I see it.
there is money plugged in for the Aquatics Center, and most of that is from the redevelopment tax increment. So all of that is
By the
going
time
towards the
it starts.
aquatics.
Okay.
So are you studying that site now? Are you looking for locations, or does that not take place for a little while?
No, we're going to be going back to the city council for, we needed additional money for the consultant who is studying sites. We currently have someone on the consultant who will be looking for site, RJM, who's doing our Pacific Pool project.
Yeah.
Can also look at potential sites, but we don't have the money right now. So we'll have to go back to the city council and ask for money, because they did want the study done and put on a shelf, just in case they're ready to go and money does become available. So we will be looking at sites. And I think that should do it.
Well, thank you for bringing this to us. It's good to see it, and, looking out 10 years, seeing what the potentials are. I know, it's tough with the tax basis, the way things are right now, and the budget. But it's good that at least a lot of these crucial projects are moving forward and staying in there. Be nice to be able to make sure that our maintenance budget is funded, because that really keeps the facilities looking good and top shape for the citizens out here. Any other comments from commissioners on? Okay, let's move on to report.
Our next report is a status of federal and state park funding and legislative issues.
Mark Sturdivant is here to provide commissioners with an update on our federal and state park funding.
Thank you. Chairman Ward, members of the Commission, I'm Mark Sturdivant, Senior Administrative Analyst for Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. And recently, George Chapchian asked me to take a few minutes to discuss with you some of the current issues we face with regard to grant funding, as well as provide you with some background on legislative activities that we've been involved in. You received a report in your packet that talks about some of the challenges facing us on the federal level, so I'm not going to go over that again. Those relate to parks-related programs that the federal government provides. But I thought what I would do, especially since this is the first time I've had an opportunity to come before you, is begin by giving you a little bit of background about what it is I do for the department and how it relates both to grant funding and to legislation. And there's actually two components to my job, which sometimes, at least at first glance, don't necessarily seem to go hand in hand. One is grants administration, and the other is legislative analysis. And the majority of my time is spent on grants administration, and that basically falls into two categories. The first is grants research and application, and that involves finding those grants which meet certain needs that the department has, and determining whether they're worth applying for, and then ultimately making the application. And the second responsibility is the grants administration portion of the job, and that's the part that people tend to forget about. It's one thing to make application for a grant and another thing to be awarded the grant, yet it's another thing entirely to oversee the funds, oversee those grants, make sure that the projects are done on a timely basis, ensure that we accurately report our costs, and make certain that we're reimbursed for our expenses as quickly as we can. That said, the other part of my job involves serving as the department's legislative liaison. And while at first glance, as I said, these two items don't seem to go together, they actually do exactly that. And the reason is pretty simple. Unlike a nonprofit organization which can make grant applications to corporations or foundations, we're pretty much limited to making grants to the county, to the state, and to the feds. And consequently, it behooves us to follow closely any legislation that relates to the funding of those grant programs. For example, you'll recall in November of 2006, the voters of the state of California passed Proposition 84, which is a water and resources bond measure. And in it, there's a lot of things that we're interested in. There's $400 million for parks, there's $100 million for nature education centers, there's $90 million for what's referred to as urban greening projects, there's another $90 million for planning grants that relate to protecting natural resources and promoting water conservation, and we'd like to get our hands on a part of all of that. So all of this is stuff that is in Prop 84 that we're very interested in, and given the fact that the voters approved this measure 16 months ago, you might be inclined to think that that money is already available to us, but in fact, that's not the case. Why? Because while the bond measure outlines how much money is available and it sets up some very broad categories where this money can be used, it doesn't provide the details. And the details are left up to the legislature to create and for the governor to sign what's referred to as implementation legislation. And this is the legislation that spells out the details. It tells us which state departments will administer which grants, how much money will be available each year, what requirements there might be for the applicants, and what kinds of projects may or may not be funded. And last year, despite everyone's best efforts, there was no implementation passed for Proposition 84. There were a number of efforts, a number of bills out there, but none of them got enough traction to be passed by the legislature. There are a couple this year that seem to sort of be taking the lead in that, and we're watching those closely, but right now there's not a lot of movement up in Sacramento on the implementation legislation, everyone being focused currently on the budget situation. So the end result of that is we're about a year behind where we hoped we would be in terms of accessing those funds from Proposition 84. And depending on what happens this year, and we've got our fingers crossed, we're definitely hoping to see implementation legislation passed, that will tell us when those funds finally will become available. So in the meantime, we participate in the Legislative Committee of the California Parks and Recreation Society. We advocate on behalf of certain pieces of legislation that we think are important to the city of Glendale. We work closely with our state lobbyist, Christopher Townsend and Associates, and we're doing all of this looking at Parks and Recreation legislation in general and the Prop 84 implementation legislation in particular, so that when it is written and when it is finally signed by the governor, it'll be of the greatest benefit to the city and the residents of Glendale. One thing that should be noted about Prop 84, which is different from the previous propositions, Prop 12 and Prop 40, is that Prop 84 contains no per capita or block grant funds for parks. So instead of having $1.3 million that we could set aside for restroom renovations, which we did from Prop 12, the ones that Audrey was speaking about a little earlier, or instead of having $880,000 from Prop 40 that we could set aside for the Pacific Park Pool project, all of the funding that we are going to go after in Prop 84 is competitive. That means we're going to be duking it out with all of the other cities, the counties, and the districts up and down the state in order to get our share of the Prop 84 funds. Now, on a federal level, much of what we do relates to the annual appropriations, which are actually going on right now back in Washington. And I was recently in Washington, D.C. with some of the other managers and directors from the city to meet with our federal legislators and their staffs about funding projects on a federal level for the city and in general, and Parks and Recreation in particular. And as far as parks projects are concerned, we made a valiant effort, particularly with our aquatic center with Adam Schiff. Pool projects don't generally get a lot of support in Congress. Bricks and mortar projects don't generally get a lot of support in Congress, but as I said, we really pitched it hard to Congressman Schiff, and Mayor Najarian did an absolutely sensational job, I felt, in the way he framed our aquatic center. He said, "Congressman, we've got a fantastic project that increases the health of our residents, extends the life of our seniors, keeps kids out of gangs, and teaches people how to save lives. Best of all, it comes with a diving board." The congressman was clearly sympathetic to the need and the value of an aquatic complex for Glendale. He noted that Pasadena has one, Burbank has one, and certainly feels that Glendale should. But as I said, bricks and mortar projects, swimming pools in particular, don't get a lot of traction in Congress. So I don't anticipate much help on a federal level in that area. We also discussed with the congressman the Rim of the Valley Corridor Study Act. That's his legislation that he's been working on actually the last 7 years to fund a study that would look at all of the natural areas surrounding the San Fernando and the Crescenta Valleys, including the Verdugo Mountains, for possible inclusion in the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. And that legislation has passed out of the House. It's now in the Senate. So he thanked the Glendale City Council for their support, which they recently provided for that legislation, and asked us to pursue Senator Feinstein, who will be carrying the load on the Senate side. It's currently in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee of the Senate and scheduled for a hearing in April. So hopefully we're going to see that being passed by the Senate later this year. We also met with Senator Boxer's office, staff members there, and we pitched our Glendale Narrows Riverwalk project. And the reason we did that is Senator Boxer has a soft spot in her heart for the LA River. She recently got $25 million for projects along the LA River. The only thing she forgot to do was include Glendale in that. It's all for the city of Los Angeles. So one of the things that we have been working on with her office in recent months is to let them know that there are quite a number of cities that have LA River frontage, including Glendale, and that we have a very exciting project along the river. We actually brought members of her Los Angeles staff out to see our project a few months ago, and then basically made a lobbying effort back in Washington last week to get some funding for a planning study that would help us to complete that project. Very quickly to wrap up, I seem to be missing the last page of my presentation, so with that, I will simply throw it open for any questions you might have.
Just curious, so there is no hope or very little hope for funding for the Adam Schiff Aquatic Center?
Not the Adam Schiff Aquatic Center, but
enough money, I'm sure we could do that.
But who knows? There might not be. There may be a possibility for the Jack Scott Aquatic Center. You know? On the federal level, probably not so much. The problem in the state side right now is, of course, the state is facing a budget crisis. But the idea of perhaps pursuing some way of acknowledging the contributions of Senator Scott would be something that we might consider pursuing.
That part of the question was rhetorical.
Yeah, we need to claim the pool as a Corps of Engineer product, water something, and get a congressional appropriation for it. So it's going to have to be creative there. Yeah, water. It's very difficult to get the federal funds for any project like that.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Sounds like you're on it.
Thank you.
As always.
Very, very detailed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, our next report.
Next item is still a report for information only about the ADA study of park facilities and citywide programs.
And I'd like to invite Coco Panosian up to the podium. Coco is our administrative analyst for the department. He is part of a greater citywide effort to analyze our compliance amongst our facilities and programs, and he's here to provide you with some more information.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, President Ward, Commissioners. We came before you a couple of months ago, presented the study itself as to what we were working on. For the viewers at home, the Parks Department was tasked with doing an ADA compatibility study of park facilities as well as citywide programs and events that we hold. Not only the parks programs, that is any program that city departments will hold. And we hired a consultant back in April of last year, Disability Access Consultants. We've been working with them throughout that time in compiling and analyzing all the facilities that we have. In addition to the parks effort, the Public Works Department also has hired TDM architects back then to study facilities that belong to facilities section of our Public Works Department. In conjunction of the two departments, they were finalized a final survey report. This is, I'll pass around for your viewing. This is only the one that the Parks Department includes, only the parks, and it also includes the Title II self-evaluation that we did of the programs. There are about 6 or 7 folders. 6 or 7 folders of that size, in addition to this one that the Public Works Facilities has resulted in. The goal, obviously, is to provide our programs and facilities, make them as accessible as possible to all Glendale residents and park patrons. What we did is there's so much information in that booklet, including the other ones, that we probably won't be able to print copies. There will be several trees we have to cut down to make that reproduction. So what we've done is we actually have them on CD. We'd like to share with you. There are a number of items in here. Feel free to look at them. They're all in PDF files and makes it very easy to view, and your feedback on these would be eventually appreciated. What the next goal steps will be is part of the process to create a transition barrier removal, which is what we're shooting towards, is to have public input. We've done the surveys, which is number one. We have already identified a ADA coordinator, which is Michael Wiedeker. Third step is to get a public input process going. Now, in this study, we've already conducted a several-month public input process where the public was notified of the option to contact either our department, myself, or the consultant that we had hired directly, and give them their feedback and input onto what they believe are high priorities, ADA accessible priorities within the city. That option has been extended. We went to council on February 12th, presented the surveys, and the council, along with the group that presented the survey findings, came up with the conclusion to extend it for another 60 days. So the public has an additional 2 months to call Mike Wiedeker, and his phone number is 548-3222, or they can feel free to call myself at the Parks Department, 548-2000, to give us more feedback on the survey results and or any other options item that they may feel is very important and a high priority for them. The surveys are also posted on the city's website. If they visit www.ci.glendale.ca.us, there is an ADA link on that. Once you click on the link, it will take you to all of these facilities, including the citywide facilities, City Hall inclusive. It's on the website. And also for people who do not have access to the internet or not computer literate, as some people may be, those folders are also can be found at the Central Library. All of the studies, including the Public Works study and the parks, are in binders at the Central Library. They can go to the reference desk and ask for them to view it and provide some comments that way. And that is the gist of the report. The next steps is going to be the ADA committee will review these, and then on an annual basis, there are funds set aside for ADA upgrades within the city's CIP budget. Annually, as Parks Department, we do upgrades to our park facilities. We include an ADA portion of it, and we do use funds from the ADA upgrade CIP funds that are available. Council has, I believe, funded it yesterday, additional funds in there for the rest of the next 10-year cycle. And annually, the ADA committee, which comprised of executives and other personnel from different departments, will be presenting the prioritized list of items given the public input and given what is most necessary to be conducted initially. Annually go back to council and present that as a budget and an update of what we've done in the previous year as to how we're coming to comply with our accessibility. There are a lot of items on there. A lot of them are minute, may not even require any funds to be able to make them accessible, might be shifting a program from one area to another to make it accessible, but there is a large bottom line dollar figure, and it's going to take a number of years for us to be able to meet all of these standards that we've found. Are there any questions?
Very good. Yes.
Just more of a comment. Saturday, I was at Orthopedic Hospital in Los Angeles for the grand opening of their, help me with
adaptive or children's play area?
It was a complete adaptive or accessible playground for children of all kinds, with all kinds of disabilities, including in wheelchairs, for kids that are blind, and regular kids at the same time would, kids that didn't have, I don't mean regular, but kids that didn't have those kinds of issues would also enjoy the park alongside them. And I was really, really impressed with the kinds of things that can be done with sounds and lights, and just, it was very, very cool.
And Commissioner Rupp-Fogel, just more of an information, we have in the past several years replaced a lot of our playgrounds, and all of the new playgrounds that we put in place do have the ADA accessible ramp, and I know we have 6, possibly 7 playground projects in line that we're looking to getting constructed in the near future, and all of them do have an ADA component attached to the project, which partially will be funded through some of the ADA CIP funds.
Yeah, I believe the one that you're discussing, they call them universal accessibility. The entire playground is accessible in there.
I believe there is a name that's skipping my mind.
Mine too.
I think you have to go from the ground up and build it, basically.
Yeah, it was just really cool. One of the things, there was a ramp, and when you walked or in your wheelchair went up and down the ramp, it cut through like a laser beam kind of thing that made different noises. So that you could actually almost make music by going back and forth up and down the ramp, and it was just very, very cool.
It's very interesting.
The only statement I have is they're going to prioritize citywide, but is there a way that within the Parks and Recreation that we're going to have our priority at our facilities and be able to review that after we go through this public process of reviewing this massive book here?
No, we do have representation on the ADA committee itself, and since a lot of the facilities people visit tend to be the parks and some of the citywide facilities and buildings, obviously we do have input as to what we also feel are some of the priorities within the parks. Yeah. And given the public input, a lot of them are accessibility to the exterior. I mean, parking is number one. If they're not able to find accessible parking, they won't be able to enter the building. Or if there's no transition to the building, they're not going to be able to go inside. So initially, some of the exterior elements of a facility are key and high priority to make accessible for us to be able to go into the building and make most of the other amenities within the building that they may use for their event accessible as well. So yes, we do have that option to provide our input as to what we believe are higher priority for the parks and within the parks themselves.
Yeah, I just know that you mentioned that there's multiple manuals like this throughout for the city, and
there is.
just to take this one right here and distill it down into kind of our key priorities and funding, so that as things move along and the funding's available that you mentioned, that we focus on some of the priorities that would affect our parks and recreation community buildings and services.
And what I would like also to pass around is, this is a kind of an analysis, cost analysis. The numbers that the consultant put in there, they're just general numbers of construction, do not include other improvements, they do not include project management costs, soft costs, consultant costs, design costs, and once you improve this little area, obviously next thing it kicks in. It doesn't include those costs, so it's a very generic dollar amount. What it does, it actually lists the areas, like there's a common lunch area, there's a playground area, there's the facilities of buildings, there's restrooms. We can also target some of our efforts in specific areas of improvement within facilities and be able to present it that way. Here's a list of the facilities.
Thanks.
And we're able to access a lot of this data from a software that came with the package that when we hired the consultants, and that is a very live software you can update and be able to come up with new reports. And that is all that I have. Do you have any other questions?
Any other comments?
No.
Okay. I know that we're on a bit of a time restraint here, so I believe that was the last of the reports. Before we go into the monthly activity reports, is there a chance that we could jump while we're still on the air if there's any written communications or move down? Do we have any communications?
We have no written communication.
Okay. Is there any commission or staff comments that you'd like to add for future meetings?
Yes, I would.
Yes.
Thank you. I was reading this Parks and Recreation official publication of the National Recreation and Park Association, and it had a number of good articles, but one in particular that I was looking at related to sustainable design and sustainable landscape, sustainable green buildings, things along that nature. I'm finding more and more of that with my projects, and whether it's LEED certification or any of the other things I just spoke about, it seems to be a priority, and that the direction for whether it's Glendale, and we should focus just on town now, that we being parks, should be kind of leading a little bit as it relates to those types of items. We have different projects and that are presented to us. I'd like to see some of this as it relates to sustainable landscapes, at least talking about it or analyzing it, because I don't see us doing that. The second thing is there are costs associated with some of this as well. And I'm not saying that in a broad, sweeping statement that we just adapt or adopt anything that relates to the sustainable design or certification, but it's something we should seriously consider.
Strive for it.
Yeah, and strive for. If it's a small increase, maybe we can incorporate it. If it's large, we look at it and say maybe not this time, maybe next time. But I at least want us to start going in that direction. And I myself would like to become a little bit more educated about this as well. So it's not just staff giving a report and us trying to ferret out whether it makes sense or not, but trying to get some literature and some education on it so that when you are making a report, we can evaluate that with some knowledge. So I'd like to see us go in that direction as it relates to future projects for us.
I think that's a well-accepted communication. Thank you. I think
Great
that's
idea.
something we should do, and maybe, Brittany, you can talk to George, see if we can get some type of
Absolutely.
feedback on that. Any other comments from staff? Okay. Due to the time constraint, I know that we've been asked to conclude. Can we take our reports that are going to be on the monthly activity reports and roll it into our next meeting?
That's fine.
Okay, if that's acceptable?
Sure, unless, like I said, mine are typically just monthly updates if there was any specific questions.
Well, we could actually, I don't know, we could go off air, conclude the meeting, and then possibly
Absolutely.
review it later
Absolutely.
or something. we've been asked to conclude the meeting at 4:45, which is currently.
I did have one additional item I wanted to share with the commission. At last month's meeting, we had presented the soccer league fee increases, and a suggestion was made to look into charging a substantial security deposit, taking a credit card, et cetera, as an additional option. Staff has explored that option with our legal department. They were only able to find one other city on record that incorporated an option of that type. They are actually recommending that we give this increase in fee in the security guards kind of a fair shot to see how it goes, along with the other options of scaling down the league, et cetera, to see how that works. Because they did caution us that if we were to propose some type of substantial fee, that we should also establish some guidelines for an appeals process, et cetera, because it is a fairly considerable amount of money. So with the Commission's approval, we will utilize some of the current options and the additional fee that we incorporated in last month's meeting for this upcoming season, see how those work, and if we do have some additional issues that we need to deal with, then we will come back with other proposals or further exploration of that particular suggestion at that time, if that is sufficient for the Commission.
Yeah, that's acceptable. Any other comments? Okay. I'm going to then recommend that we adjourn the meeting at 4:48, and we'll cover the monthly reports maybe electronically. Okay.